The premise of today's theory is not a complete original thought by me. It was inspired by another theory that suggests that Bink Sake is the Holy Grail. What made me think that it could perhaps be the devil fruit is what we learned recently about green blood, and the Holy Grail is the blood of Jesus. Well, in my research, I found that somebody already made a theory about how Bink Sake could be Joyboy's devil fruit. Funny enough, these two separate theories never really suggest one or the other together simultaneously. It's either one that Bink Sake is the Holy Grail or that it's a devil fruit. Well, today I'm going to show you that both could be true and all the evidence to support that. So let's start by going over what is the Holy Grail, or at least what is the interpretation of the Holy Grail I'm using for this theory. Well, the most common belief is that the Holy Grail is a cup that was used during the Last Supper Jesus had before he died. Jesus often gave his blood in the form of wine to his disciples while living, but it did not grant them holy powers. However, it is rumored that if one were to drink from the Holy Grail, they would be receiving holy power. I'm sure based off that description, you could already see where I'm going with this. I think Joyboy is a horned lunarian. We've already seen horned angels on Skypiea. I predict that Joyboy will have hair like Mary's. He's the shipwright that made the Going Merry. But instead of that white wool atop of his head, it would be black wool that looks like an afro. Also, notice how the horns on Mary's head are like the swirls of a devil fruit. So then, who is the Jesus of One Piece? The short answer is Joyboy. The long answer is derived from comparing the two. In order to do this, we have to draw from many instances throughout the story. Oda is a big fan of contradicting references. A great and relevant example of this is a man named Yama. He is a righteous and devout follower of God, aka NL. He leads angels into battle. What's so contradictory is not that he's a villain, but rather that his name is a reference to the underworld. So on one hand, he is seen as a heavenly figure and even a shepherd like Jesus. But on the other hand, his name is in reference to a devil-like entity. I believe the same is true of Nika/Joyboy. They are somehow simultaneously gods, but at the same time the enemy of gods, aka devils. And I figured I should mention that Yama was defeated by Robin, who is just another character who embodies this both angelic and demonic powers and being of a person. And also, by the way, Yama is an alternative translation for the name Enma, which you should be familiar through Zoro. So this notion that Joyboy and Nika could be devils is not new to this channel. Hopefully you already checked out this video. But I'll summarize it just for the sake of this theory. Brook was mistaken for Satan, and we could assume it's simply because he is a skeleton. But isn't it peculiar that the devil is represented as a black sheep, and the hat on top of the cult leader just so happens to look like an afro? Brook ends up helping the cult and tries to inspire them to stand up for themselves with his music. That reminds me of the drums of liberation. And also there was a time that when Brook was playing music for his enemies, it made them passive and happy. The illusion he created made him look like Nika, and the roof of the buildings looked like chestnuts similar to Nika's spear. So I've come to the conclusion that the supposed Satan-sama was actually in reference to Joyboy/Nika. Now that summary doesn't do anywhere near enough justice to just how much evidence I show towards Nika being Lucifer. And by the way, Lucifer means the bringer of light or dawn. So if you haven't already, please check out that video. Now it begs the question, how can he be Jesus and devil at the same time? Much like as I showed with Yama, Nika/Joyboy have contradictory references tied to them. It's exactly the thing Oda has done throughout the story time and time again. The black sheep that the satanic cult worships is obviously a reference to Baphomet, but Baphomet is a goat and not a sheep. However, Jesus is a shepherd, and sheep are the most referenced animals in the Bible. Joyboy is a crossover in reference to Jesus and Baphomet. Now is a good time to mention that I don't believe Nika and Joyboy are the same person. I think Nika was actually a being that existed around 4,000 years ago, while Joyboy was only about 800 years ago. Jesus is the second coming of God, and Joyboy could have been the second coming of Nika. I speculate that Joyboy was the byproduct of a blasphemous union. A Lunarian, probably with goat-like features similar to Yama's divine soldiers, and that of a sheep mink. All Lunarians are born with white hair, but because Joyboy was impure, he was born with black hair and inherited wool as hair from his mother, hence why he has a black afro. This is where the special people Bonnie was talking about in reference to Kuma comes from. I believe these Afro people, we should call them, are like Usopp, Kuma, Brook, Blackbeard, and so much more. I believe there will be a lot of African inspiration tied to Joyboy, and a lion is known as the king of an African jungle. Take one look at the Thousand Sunny and you could tell how it's in reference to Nika, just the fact that it's a sun and Nika was a sun god. The fact that Sunny is a lion is also a reference to Joyboy and Nika. And all this talk about Joyboy being a sheep, well then that just shows that even the going merry is a reference to Joyboy and Nika. The idea of a shepherd turned sheep isn't even new in One Piece. The iconic song goes, "Mary had a little lamb," but in One Piece, Mary is the sheep/lamb. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Joyboy's mother is named Mary, spelled M-E-R-R-Y, just like how Jesus' mother is also Mary, except spelled M-A-R-Y. Now, you might be wondering, if I suggest that Joyboy was a black sheep, then how come Gear 5th has white hair? Well, it's because he inherited the will of the sun god. In his path towards enlightenment, he attained a form that turns his black wool into white. This is similar to how Mink's fur turns white in Sulong. In fact, Sulong literally means moon lion. So perhaps Joyboy was the first to ever enter Sulong. Jesus is known as the Lion of Judah, a title he attained after enlightenment. It goes something like this. Jesus is called the Lion of Judah, who triumphed over temptation and sin, pain and suffering, over fear, over death, and even the devil himself. Jesus is the lion who retreats before nothing. That sure sounds like enlightenment to me. His hair has also been compared to that of a white sheep. Here's the quote. "The hairs of his head were white, like white wool, like snow. His eyes were like flame of fire. His feet were burnished bronze, refined in a furnace, and his voice was like a roar of many waters." Isn't it quite the coincidence that the Straw Hats have two ships that are both animals referenced to Jesus? It's most likely due to Luffy's connection to Joyboy. Now you might be wondering, if Nika is the sun god, why would Sulong or moon lions be in reference to him? Nika has been constantly shown in front of a full moon. In chapter 289, it is titled Full Moon, and it is the same chapter that Nolan saves the Shandians from a disease. A mortal man did what their gods couldn't. That is the will of Nika, humans standing up to the might of gods and saving themselves. Nika became a sun god, and his story lived on for thousands of years. Not just his story, but I believe even the full moon was living on Nika's will. Even as early as chapter 5, you can see the full moon is present when Zoro is making his promise to his best friend Kuina. So it isn't just Sulong, the full moon probably has the power to influence the will and fate of those whose spirits are aligned with Nika's will. People like Luffy and Joyboy are so aligned with Nika, they were able to recreate the powers of the sun god Nika. However, unlike Luffy, I don't think that Joyboy ate a devil fruit to accomplish this. Zoro didn't eat a devil fruit, yet somehow is able to access divine power. Joyboy most likely took inspiration either consciously or subconsciously from Nika. So you know how Zoro can enter a form that makes him to an Ashura, aka a deity. Well, I believe Joyboy created a form that turned him into Nika, also a deity. That power he created is what we know now as Luffy's fruit. The idea that you could create the powers of a devil fruit without eating a devil fruit has been proven possible by Dr. Vegapunk. Funny enough, I said that was a possibility even before it was revealed in the chapter. And it was that theory that then led to me saying that, well, I believe Nika / Joyboy are the devils that help create the devil fruits. So the fact that I got the first theory right, well, makes it much more credible for these follow-up theories to also be true. And speaking of which is another one of those follow-up theories. SAD is made of animals, while SSG is made of humans. What I mean by that is similar to how SAD is made from the lives and souls of animals, I believe that SSG is made from human souls. Vegapunk learned how to recreate devil fruit powers through what he calls green blood. I believe that the green blood is actually ectoplasm extracted from human beings. Thus, I call it ectoplasma, and it is essentially a person's soul in liquid form. I know this is my headcanon / theory, but I have a post to show all my evidence toward this. I will link it in the description. Regardless of whether ectoplasma is real, green blood being the source of Seraphim devil fruit powers is a fact. How this relates to Joyboy is that I believe Bink Sake is the One Piece equivalent of the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is full of wine that is made from Jesus' blood. It is said that the one that drinks it shall gain his power. So in this scenario, instead of wine, it is sake, and it is instead Joyboy's blood / soul that is within Bink Sake. The Holy Grail is so mysterious that it is questionable whether or not it even exists. However, in the world of One Piece, you don't have to look far because it's in Luffy. He has already drank from the Holy Grail, aka the Hito no Mi model Nika. However, it wasn't always like that. Just like the Holy Grail, it is said that the Hito no Mi model Nika is very elusive. Although the Holy Grail is supernatural, it wasn't believed that it somehow was hiding its own self from being found, but rather it was protected and transported by a group. This group was known as the Knights of Templar. At one point in time, the Knights of Templar were highly respected by both the government and church. However, there came a time that they were accused of being devil worshippers and were executed. The devil they worshipped was Baphomet. However, Baphomet isn't a devil, but rather a misunderstood deity. Similarly, I believe the world government looks at Joyboy and Nika as the devils, and those who carry on their will as devil worshippers. How did Bink Sake, aka the Hito no Mi model Nika, evade the world government for 800 years? Well, the answer is in the song. Gather up all the crew, time to ship out Brinks' brew. That is the Viz translation of the Bink Sake song. And as the song implies, it's meant to be delivered by pirates. So I believe that for 800 years it was constantly being delivered by pirates from one place to another, until Shanks finally delivered it to Luffy. And when Brook played the song for Luffy, he said that the first time he heard it was from Shanks and his crew. While the lyrics of Bink Sake are quite generic, some of them seem directly tied to Nika, such as drums, which could be in reference to Drums of Liberation, as well as the sun and moon seeming to be both something to look forward to, rather than opposing forces. If we let blows wind of fear, then the end of us is near. Even so, tomorrow the sun will rise again. Later on in the song, no longer can we now see shadow hands still waving free. Why worry? There's sure to be a moonlit night again. So both the moon and night are good figures, and according to Bink Sake. I hope you like this theory, and I have much more to come. Please be on the lookout for 2 videos coming soon. One is my video on Devil Fruit Awakenings. I put so much work into it. It's a 50-minute video essay, and I believe I put just about the most amount of time and dedication into a Devil Fruit Awakening video. And then next is related to this video, and it's going to be about why I believe Vegapunk studied the occult in order to create Seraphims, which will involve devils and the Holy Grail and green blood and all that stuff. If you happen to be watching after those videos have already came out, then you should be able to click on them on the screen right now to go watch them. So subscribe and stay tuned.